My wife's unforgettable first love returned to the country, and I asked her for a divorce. She sneered, "Do you think you can survive without me?" But in the end, the one who couldn't survive was her, and the one who came back begging was still her. Chapter 1. Camila and I have been married for 12 years. I've taken care of her for 12 years, down to every little detail. Since her grandfather passed away, the vast wealth and responsibilities of the Mu family fell on her shoulders. Camila's grandfather was the man who saved my life, a man I respected deeply. Before his death, he asked me to marry Camila, and I agreed. Camila has been spoiled and isn't capable of much. I beg you, for the sake of my years of kindness to you, please help me, help her too. This was the first time the old man ever used his favor to pressure me, and I had no choice but to nod. Camila's grandfather passed away right after we finished our wedding. As soon as he passed, internal strife erupted within the Mu family corporation. Not only that, Camila's uncles all took advantage of the fact that she was just a woman and began seizing the family's assets. Because of this, I had to calculate every step to protect Camila and the Mu family. After that, everyone laughed at me, calling me the loyal dog of the Mu family. There were countless assassination attempts, but I didn't care. Mu's grandfather saved my life, and repaying him was my duty. I wanted to live a peaceful life with Camila, but she was convinced I was only after her family's wealth. I tried several times to kindly persuade her to join me in learning how to manage the company. She mocked, "Isn't the whole reason my father left you behind to manage the company? You just need to watch over the company properly and stop meddling in my affairs." Once, after I pulled her out of the arms of those men in the club, she got angry. "Aren't you done yet, James? Do you really think just because we got married, you're my husband? Dream on, you're just the steward my father left me. Know your place, and stop causing trouble." From that day on, I knew Camila never intended to live a proper life with me, nor would she ever change her ways. I was involved in a car accident due to retaliation from the Mu family's rival. I called Camila, asking her to stay at the company for just 2 days. "James, are you a woman? Clinging on like this, is it fun?" She hung up, blacklisted my number, and never once came to see me in the hospital. I had no choice but to continue working through the pain. She left the entire Mu family's business on my shoulders without a care. She was confident in her father's life-saving favor toward me and acted without fear. Over the years, I slowly reclaimed the businesses that were taken when the old man passed. I gradually restored the Mu family to its former glory. I thought that this would be the rest of our lives, civil, without bothering each other. But for some reason, she suddenly returned home, playing the role of a virtuous wife and loving mother. Chapter 2. After a few days at the villa, Camila's phone was constantly blowing up with calls from her friends. At the dinner table, I glanced at her. "Aren't you going out?" She turned off her phone. "What? You don't want me to stay at home?" I ignored her and started working. "This is your home. You can stay wherever you want." She looked at me with displeasure. "James, don't you notice something different about me today?" I raised an eyebrow and looked at her, puzzled. She bit her lip. "I got a new haircut and even changed into a new nightgown. And you didn't even notice?" Only then did I see that she was wearing a deep V-lace dress, her legs long and straight. "I see. It looks nice." She suddenly leaned closer, the scent of her perfume filling my nose. She batted her eyes and smiled seductively. "So, who looks better, me or Laura?" "Laura." I suddenly realized why she had been staying home so often lately. The business between the Mu family and the Lin family was managed by Laura. After the partnership ended, she asked if I would be interested in joining Lin Corporation. "Camila doesn't appreciate what she has. If you join me, I won't let your talent go to waste." Laura was not only young and beautiful but also intelligent. To me, she would have been the perfect partner, but I had already made a promise to Camila's grandfather. I couldn't break my word, so I rejected Laura. Camila poked me. "Answer me. Who looks better, me or Laura?" Not wanting her to delay my work, I replied absent-mindedly, "You look better." Camila was immediately delighted. She dressed up beautifully and went out. I thought she would finally return to her old habit of being gone for 10 days at a time, but to my surprise, she came back that night and bought me lots of clothes and shoes. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't surprised. Even though our marriage was arranged by her grandfather, I had long given up on any hope of affection from her. But after all, we were married, and being friends or business partners who could live peacefully wasn't too bad. At least the surface was calm. This peaceful life lasted for 8 years. Camila truly played the role of a good wife and mother for 8 years. Just when I thought this could last forever, Ethan appeared. He was Camila's unforgettable first love, the man who occupied her entire youth. No one who came after could ever surpass him. I had seen the men Camila drank with in those clubs, and they all had one thing in common: they all looked like Ethan. Chapter 3. The day Ethan returned to the country, I was accompanying Camila for a checkup at the hospital. We had been trying for 3 years before we finally had this child. I was overjoyed. working from home every day, afraid that the housekeeper might not take care of her well enough. I specifically hired someone to learn how to cook dishes that pregnant women love. After Camila became pregnant, her figure gradually changed, which often made her cry and throw tantrums. I felt sorry for her and did everything I could to cheer her up. After each outburst, she would look at me with red eyes and say, "Honey, I'm sorry. Please don't be mad at me." Looking at her delicate, childlike face, my heart softened little by little. Just when I thought my life was about to become perfect, Ethan effortlessly took everything from me. Chapter 4. After the checkup, Camila seemed distracted. Her hand holding the phone turned pale, and she forced a smile at me. "Honey, you should go home first. I have a class reunion this afternoon, and I might be back late." I felt uneasy. "I'll drive you there." "No need. Honey, let the driver take me. I want to have your coconut chicken soup when I get home. Can you make it for me?" She pouted playfully at me, and I couldn't help but smile. All right. It took 5 hours to make the coconut chicken soup, and she would be home in time to enjoy it. The doctor said her pregnancy was stable, as long as she didn't drink alcohol. That night, when Camila came home, her eyes were red. I brought the coconut chicken soup to her. "Try it. I don't want it anymore." I coaxed her gently. "Just one sip." "Okay, I've been working on it all afternoon." Suddenly, she got angry and threw the bowl. I said, "I don't want it. Can't you understand?" She cried and ran upstairs, leaving me stunned. The soup had scalded the back of my hand, turning it red. That night, I saw photos from the class reunion posted by Camila's friend on social media. The person sitting next to Camila was none other than Ethan, who had been abroad for years. Chapter 5. Ethan and Camila were childhood sweethearts. They were well matched in every way, and with so many years of affection between them, they should have been engaged. In the photo, Ethan was wearing a white shirt, with gold-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, his gaze fixed on Camila, restrained yet full of longing. He had that youthful charm Camila had always liked, something I no longer possessed. After years of ruthless business battles, my heart had grown cold and hard, devoid of youthful innocence. Ethan's parents had always wanted him to be engaged to Camila. Since Camila was the only daughter of the Mu family and not particularly capable, marrying her meant the entire Mu family would become part of the Lu family. Camila's grandfather saw through this and refused to allow their marriage, insisting on seeing Camila marry me before he passed away. Now, with Camila's grandfather gone and Ethan back in the country, nothing stood in their way. I went to open the bedroom door to go to sleep, but it was locked. Camila had locked the door from the inside. I went to the guest room, already prepared for Camila to change her heart. I neither fought nor argued. I only hoped that Camila would give birth to the child, who would inherit the Mu family's estate, giving her some security. This way, the Lu family wouldn't completely swallow up the Mu family and take everything from her. The child was the only lifeline I left for her and the last tie between us. Once the child was born, I would no longer owe the Mu family anything. Chapter 6. The next morning, while I was in a meeting at the company, an unexpected visitor showed up at the front desk asking for me. When I went downstairs, I saw Ethan's figure. He smiled and greeted me. "Hello, James. I'm Ethan." I hadn't expected our first confrontation to come so quietly. I gave him a careful look. Ethan looked even more distinguished in person than in the photos. His every movement exuded a natural elegance, something I couldn't hope to achieve, no matter how many years I spent fighting my way up. He invited me to a nearby private room. Once we were seated, he poured me a cup of tea. "You know about me and Camila. If it weren't for the old men bringing you in to sabotage things, she and I would have been married long ago." I nodded. "Indeed, I'm back now. And Cami still has feelings for me. I know you don't care for her. Just let her go." After saying that, he pulled out a check for 10 million and placed it in front of me. "This is your compensation." Hearing his words, I couldn't help but laugh. "Do you know what Mu Group's monthly revenue is now?" Ethan's eyes narrowed, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. "But in the end, that's Mu family business, isn't it? It has nothing to do with you. You wouldn't be thinking of taking it all for yourself, would you?" He grinned. I nodded. The old man personally placed it in front of me. "There's nothing I can do. I have to take it, even if I don't want to," I said with a touch of annoyance. Ethan's face darkened, and he sneered. "James, clinging to Cami like this is pointless. She's in love with me." He flashed a confident smile. He and Camila were childhood sweethearts, so naturally, he had confidence. They studied together, attended concerts together, traveled abroad together. Meanwhile, I was just a poor student being sponsored by the Mu family at the time. While they were enjoying life's pleasures, I was working part-time washing dishes in the cafeteria, because that's how I got 2 free meals. I had to make a $1 stretch to 2. Camila wasn't wrong. Someone like me didn't even deserve to talk to people like them. They were born with everything, and I was the outsider who took their place. My presence had always been an eyesore, but none of this was what I wanted. They couldn't have it both ways. When they needed me, they had me marry Camila. When they didn't, they wanted to kick me aside. Why should I accept that? I stared straight into Ethan's eyes, not blinking. You know what this behavior of yours is called, right? You're the male version of a homewrecker. If you can't make her happy, yet insist on keeping her by your side, you're truly disgusting. Ethan clenched his fists, furious, and tried to hit me, but I easily subdued him. An enraged fool, you really are pathetic. I let him go and turned to leave. Chapter 7. I drove home, and as soon as I opened the door, Camila threw a cup at me, hitting me in the head. Blood flowed down my forehead. Her furious gaze froze in place as she rushed over in a panic. Why didn't you dodge? I brushed her hand away, suddenly feeling exhausted. And you, Camila, why did you throw the cup at me? Why do you keep hurting me for no reason? I looked at her face and mentally etched it into my memory. Camila, haven't I treated you well all these years? Or have I done something to wrong you? Can you tell me why you're doing this to me? Is it just because I owe your father my life? Do I deserve this treatment because of that? Tears suddenly streamed down her face as she anxiously grabbed my hand. No, honey, no, that's not it. It's Ethan. Ethan told me you met him today and even hit him. I laughed bitterly. So you're standing up for him, taking revenge on his behalf. Is that it? I took a step back, raising my hands to prevent her from touching me. My voice was hoarse as I turned to leave. Camila, let's get a divorce. I'll have my secretary send you the papers. We're done. Camila panicked and rushed to hug me from behind. You're just mad, right, honey? Once you calm down, everything will be fine, won't it? Tell me. I pried her arms off me, completely drained. I'm tired. Camila, let's end this. Seeing the determination in my eyes, she finally realized I was serious. She cried and hit me. Don't regret this, James. I won't. I left as soon as I said it. She slammed the door behind me. Her devastated sobs echoed through the villa's doors, but I walked away without hesitation. Chapter 8. I had never slept so well. When I woke up, it was already close to the afternoon. My phone was full of missed calls from Camila. I drove to the office and opened the door, only to find Camila standing there. She threw the contract at my feet, raising her head and glaring at me fiercely. Didn't you want a divorce? Fine. Let's get divorced. Go ahead and sign. Camila's delicate face showed signs of exhaustion, the dark circles under her eyes barely concealed by her heavy makeup. It looked like she hadn't slept all night. I picked up the contract and read it in a few minutes. The terms of the divorce were extremely harsh. Not only was I required to give up control and shares of Mu Group, but she also wanted to take most of my personal assets. As for the properties, not a single one was left for me. Camila had a smug look on her face, certain that I wouldn't dare sign. My hands trembled with anger. How was this any different from being left with nothing? Seeing my trembling hand holding the contract, Camila's tone softened involuntarily. What do you say, James? If you don't sign, we can still. Before she could finish her sentence, I had already written my name without hesitation. You're crazy, James. Camila stared at me in disbelief, the confidence in her eyes finally gone. She was afraid now. I don't want a single cent of Mu family's money. My personal account has only a little over 80,000. If you need it, I can transfer half to you. I spoke calmly, my eyes filled with nothing but exhaustion. All these years, I had poured my heart and soul into the company and into Camila. Aside from necessary expenses, I hadn't bought anything extra. Since Camila wanted me to walk away with nothing, I would grant her wish. In this way, I would also repay the old man's favor completely. Seeing my resolute attitude, the reluctance in Camila's eyes gradually turned into anger. Fine, if you want to be noble, I'll grant you that. I'd love to see how long you can last with your 80,000 once you leave Mu Group. With that, she slammed the door in a fit of rage, just like yesterday. Looking out the window at the towering buildings, I glanced at the photo of me at 18 when I was sponsored by the Mu family. Finally, I'm free. Chapter 9. Not long after leaving Mu Group, my phone started blowing up. When I saw the screenshots of Camila's post in her social media, I couldn't help but laugh. This was so Camila. In her post, she announced that she had divorced me and warned that anyone who helped me would be going against her. Still as childish as ever, I turned off my phone and walked into a quiet bar on the side of the road. The burning liquid slid down my throat. The colorful lights flickered over my body, making me uncomfortable. Camila never liked me drinking, so after we got married, even when I had to drink for business, I'd wash myself multiple times before daring to enter the house. But today, I could drink to my heart's content, because I no longer had to care about her. I no longer had to care about anyone. I was finally free. From now on, I could live the way I wanted, and no one could morally manipulate me anymore. Mr. Liu, what brings you here for a drink today? Aren't you in a hurry to go home and accompany your wife? I looked up to see a pair of playful eyes staring at me. Laura was watching me with amusement. The overhead lights cast a warm glow on her, and after half a year without seeing her, She looked even more graceful and gentle. I'm divorced, I said calmly. What? You're divorced? Laura asked with feigned surprise. Seeing her act so shocked, I couldn't help but laugh. Your acting is terrible. She smiled helplessly. I was just worried you might take it too hard. Everyone knows you're famous in our circle for pampering your wife. Yes, everyone knew, except for Camila. She took it for granted, pushing me further and further. When the old man passed away, almost everyone thought that Mu Group falling into my hands was like a sheep entering a tiger's den, and that it wouldn't be long before I divorced Camila and took over the Mu family's assets. But I didn't. Step by step, I carried Mu Group on my shoulders, doing everything I could to protect Camila. Even Laura once said that if I were her husband, the Lin family would have dominated the capital by now. But why couldn't Camila understand? Let it go. Losing you is Camila's loss. Laura comforted me and filled her glass with wine. I pointed a finger at her, and she looked at me in confusion. This bottle costs 10,000. You poured about a tenth. Transfer the money or cash. Hearing my words, Laura couldn't help but burst into laughter. Are you bankrupt? I smiled at her through my drunken haze. I walked away with nothing. I downed the rest of my drink in one gulp and passed out in her arms the next moment. Chapter 10. When I woke up, my head was splitting. Out of habit, I grabbed my phone, ready to head to work. Wait. Wasn't I drinking with Laura last night? How did I end up in bed? My eyes shot open. The room's decor was warm and inviting, with a hint of peach-scented perfume in the air. Hearing that I was awake, Laura entered the room with breakfast. You're awake? I quickly put on my clothes, apologized to Laura, and tried to leave. What's this, James? You sleep in my bed, and now you want to just walk away. Laura suddenly blocked my way, her tone assertive. Since you have nowhere else to go, why don't you help me manage my family's subsidiary? How about it? She smiled, wearing the same confident look she always had during negotiations when she knew she had the upper hand. I thought it over calmly. At this point, I had nowhere else to go. Camila and our mutual friends had made it clear where they stood. Laura was definitely the best choice. I want 30% of the company's shares. Laura smiled happily. Deal. She tapped the table beside her, her eyes curving into a smile. Now, let's eat. Chapter 11. Laura generously provided me with all the resources she had. Taking over the new company went much more smoothly than when I first started handling Mu Group's business. It wasn't even close. She practically handed the subsidiary over to me entirely, and I didn't disappoint her. In just 3 months, the company's revenue increased nearly tenfold. I became incredibly busy, dealing with countless issues at the office every day. As I was reviewing the latest financial reports, I heard a commotion at the door. Camila barged in angrily, pushing the door open with force. The secretary following behind kept apologizing, explaining that she couldn't stop her. James, how could you get involved with Laura? And you're helping the Lin family attack our Mu family's business. Do you have any idea how much our revenue dropped this month? Her voice was sharp, and she swept everything off my desk onto the floor. Hearing her unreasonable outburst, I almost laughed. First of all, we're divorced. Whoever I'm with now is none of your business. Second, the capital market is a cutthroat competition for survival. No one is going to give you a free pass. I don't see anything wrong with what I'm doing. Camila pointed at me, furious. My grandfather saved your life, and the Mu family raised you all these years. Now you're turning around and competing against us for business. Just like before, she used the Mu family patriarch to pressure me. She thought I'd react like I had countless times before, helpless, frustrated, resigned, and ultimately forced to give in. I looked up and met her gaze. Camila, I no longer owe your grandfather anything. I've worked myself to the bone for Mu family for 12 years, repaying that debt. What more do I owe your family? My voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. Get out. Camila froze, unable to believe I would say something like that to her. Her arrogance disappeared instantly, and her voice softened as she choked back tears. What about the child? Even if you don't care about Mu Group or me, do you not care about our child? I stayed silent, lips pursed. She raised her voice, overcome with emotion. You don't care about the baby either. She sobbed uncontrollably, all her previous arrogance gone. I unclenched my fists, my tone softening slightly. Take good care of yourself during the pregnancy. Once the baby is born, I'll fulfill my responsibilities as a father. Seeing me slightly relent, Camila seemed to latch onto a lifeline. James, you wanted this child. You can't just walk away. You must remarry me, or I'll get rid of this child. Her expression was twisted, her eyes once again filled with that familiar, manipulative confidence. I couldn't help but feel disgusted, disappointed. If you don't want the baby, I'll respect your decision. The child was not only the last connection between me and Camila but also the last bit of security I had left for her future. If she didn't want that security, then I would let her go. I was no longer the man who would let the Mu family and Camila humiliate me at will. I left first, allowing Camila to destroy my office in a fit of rage. Chapter 12. Cheers, Mr. Liu. Laura raised her wine glass, clinking it against mine, financial report in hand. She looked at me with a beaming smile, clearly satisfied with my performance. During the time I had been helping her manage the company, several projects that were on the verge of collapse had been brought back to life under my leadership, earning the Lin family tens of millions in profit. Those shareholders at the main company who used to mock her had fallen silent. Every day after work, Laura would come and take me out to dinner. After a while, I got used to having her around. Ms. Lin, once this project is complete, I plan to cash out all my shares. I put down my chopsticks and gently expressed my desire to leave. Laura's smile immediately faded, replaced by anxiety. Is someone at the company giving you trouble? Tell me who it is, and I'll. It's not that. I shook my head. You and the Lin family have treated me very well. I'm not leaving because of work-related issues. It's just that I want to build something of my own. My years at the Mu family taught me one thing. If I truly wanted to be independent in Beijing, I needed to have something that was entirely my own. Otherwise, I'd never be fully free. Laura studied my expression, her gaze thoughtful, and eventually nodded in understanding. If you're ever interested, there will always be a high-paying position for you at the Lin family. I smiled at her, appreciating her offer. Just then, my phone rang. When I looked at the screen, it was Camila calling. With a sigh, I reluctantly answered. James, I'm at the hospital right now. Laura asked. Who is it? Camila's voice suddenly turned sharp. James, I'm giving you half an hour to get here. If you don't show up, you'll never see your child again. She hung up abruptly. With no other choice, I grabbed my coat and drove to meet her. Because of traffic, I arrived half an hour late at the address Camila had given me. I didn't want to have any more ties to her, but she was carrying my child. I had no choice. As soon as I reached the entrance to the department, I heard Ethan's concerned voice. Cammy, don't worry. Even if James doesn't come, I'll still be here with you. Camila, pale-faced, responded with a soft I walked in, and the moment Camila saw me, her eyes turned red with self-pity. So you actually showed up. I thought I'd never see you again, but it doesn't matter. You won't have to see me anymore. Ethan pulled the blanket over her, his face full of concern. Cammy, you just had an abortion. Don't get upset. He then turned to me, his eyes filled with accusation. James, no matter what, that was your child. How could you abandon her at a time like this and be with another woman? Camila bit her lip, her voice trembling. Get him out of here. If he doesn't care, there's nothing left to say. Even though I had prepared myself, my mind still went blank for a moment. I couldn't believe it. Are you insane? Do you really think aborting the baby is good for you? Camila, you fool. I thought that, even if not for me or the Mu family, Camila would at least keep the baby. After all, it was her own flesh and blood, but reality had slapped me in the face. What mattered most to Camila was never me, and not even the Mu family, it was always Ethan. Chapter 13. After leaving the hospital, I cut off all contact with Camila and sold the shares Laura had given me, cashing out a large sum of money. I wanted nothing more than to leave this place and sever all ties with the Mu family. After many years of working in Beijing, I had built up connections and networks far beyond what most entrepreneurs could dream of. As a result, my new company's business progressed exceptionally well, and within a few years, it became a leader in the industry. Though not as massive as the Lin or Mu families, it was more than enough to secure my position. At the same time, my business with the Lin family continued to mutually benefit us, and my relationship with Laura gradually deepened. We began dining together, listening to classical music, and traveling together. I was slowly forgetting the pain Camila had caused me, focusing on living my life for myself. I heard that your ex-wife and Ethan will be attending the Lin family's banquet tonight. Laura straightened my collar, her eyes carefully observing my expression. After Camila and I divorced, the Mu family's business went through a period of decline. It wasn't until Camila married Ethan and the Liu family took over the Mu family's affairs that things started to improve. I looked at Laura, who was thoughtfully fixing my clothes, and gently kissed her on the forehead. She and I are long over. Hearing my answer, Laura didn't seem entirely pleased. Instead, she said, Camila and Ethan have been fighting constantly since they got married, and Ethan's mother isn't treating Camila well. She continued, watching my reaction closely. Word is that when Camila was pregnant, the baby was too far along. She insisted on having an abortion, which left her unable to conceive again. I interrupted her. All right, let's not talk about irrelevant people anymore. Seeing my attitude, Laura smiled gently and took my hand as we walked into the banquet hall. Chapter 14. Although my company isn't large yet, it's already a leader in the industry, and my relationship with the Lin family is exceptional. Because of this, many people at the banquet were eager to connect with me. After some conversations, I did manage to find a few promising business partners. Ethan, why would you bring Camila to the Su family banquet? What help can a woman who's never managed a company provide? I turned my head and saw Ethan walking in with his mother. Camila followed behind them, looking dazed. Her once delicate, charming face now looked deathly pale. Mom, Cammy is my wife. It's only right for me to bring her, Ethan replied seriously. Mrs. Lu scoffed at her son's words, turning away to chat with other wealthy daughters. I shook my head, not intending to have any contact with Camila or the Mu family. I was about to go find Laura, but before I could take 2 steps, I saw Mrs. Lu enthusiastically pulling Laura aside for a chat. Laura, you and Ethan are both leaders among the younger generation in Beijing. Our families should collaborate more in the future. Mrs. Lu looked at Laura with a gentle smile, completely different from how she had just treated Camila. Laura, however, didn't look pleased. She subtly moved Mrs. Lu's hand away. When I was in my 20s, I was already running my family's company day and night. I doubt Ethan, who took his sweet time studying abroad, would have much to say to me. Mrs. Lu's expression stiffened, but she forced a smile. It doesn't matter. Ethan is now a board member of several companies. I'm sure you'll have more in common. Seeing that Mrs. Lu still didn't know when to back off, Laura's face turned cold. Since Ethan has married the Mu family's daughter, maybe you should spend more time caring for your daughter-in-law rather than talking to me. With that, she walked over to me, took my hand, and led me away. I couldn't help but sigh. Ethan is at least polite. How does Mrs. Lu manage to be so irritating? Laura's expression remained calm. Probably because Camila can't have children. She's been wanting her son to divorce and remarry for a while now. Someone like Mrs. Lu, who has benefited from taking advantage of others, wouldn't easily hand over her family's legacy in the future. Driving Camila to divorce is just a matter of time. I sighed again at Laura's words. Laura looked disgusted. They use their son to latch onto someone when it's convenient, and once they're done, they kick them out. The Lu family is truly repulsive. Chapter 15. The banquet went by quickly. The guests gradually left, and I glanced at the clock on the wall, ready to leave with Laura. By chance, we ran into Camila arguing with Ethan at the entrance. Ethan, am I still your wife? Your mother publicly humiliated me at the banquet and was openly scouting for another wife for you, and you did nothing. Does your Lu family even see me as a person? Camila's face was drained of all color, and her lips were pale. Her eyes were filled with disappointment. Ethan's expression hardened as he grabbed her wrist. Let's talk about this at home. Camila pulled her hand away forcefully, standing firm. Let go of me. Since I married you, how many benefits has your Lu family gained from Mu Group? How much has your status improved? I've endured countless humiliations from your mother. Now that you've drained everything from the Mu family, I'm no longer needed, right? Hearing Camila's words, Ethan's temper flared as well. Camila, be honest. Without the Lu family stepping in, how long do you think Mu Group could have survived? As for my mother, she was wrong, and I'll make her apologize to you when we get home. Now can you stop throwing tantrums and come home with me? Camila's eyes reddened, and she let out a bitter laugh, stepping back. Tantrums, tantrums. You barely come home because of your work, and it's my fault for throwing tantrums. Your mother mocks me for not being able to have children, and that's also my fault. Her eyes filled with pain, and her voice trembled as she continued. And now, your Lu family publicly humiliates me, treating me as disposable. Is that also because of my tantrums? Ethan's face darkened as he took a deep breath. We'll discuss this at home, Camila. But something seemed to snap in Camila. She pointed at Ethan and shouted, "You're not even half as good to me as James was. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have lost my child. Your Lu family has been after the Mu family's assets from the start, trying to wipe us out." Hearing this, Ethan dropped all pretense and stormed out of the banquet, leaving Camila alone. Collapsing in tears, I watched the scene unfold, feeling as though everything was happening as expected, but I wasn't happy about it. Chapter 16. A few months later, Camila and Ethan divorced. Before the divorce, she visited the company a few times. She rallied the old members of the Mu family and took back control of Mu Group. When Mrs. Lu found out, she had a massive argument with Camila, but this time, Camila didn't cry or make a scene. She simply left the Lu family the next day. Without the Mu family's support, many of Ethan's business ventures crumbled. His decline was visible to everyone, but Camila didn't fare much better. Mu Group's scale shrank significantly, and it never regained its former glory. Meanwhile, my relationship with Laura progressed quickly, and we got engaged a month ago. Reflecting on everything that happened in the past 6 months, I sighed, placed the white chrysanthemum in front of the Mu patriarch's grave, bowed, and turned to leave. As I did, I saw Camila. She looked gaunt and pale, so much so that I barely recognized her. She saw me and hesitated before finally speaking. "You're here to see Grandpa too?" I nodded, not intending to say much. Camila grabbed my hand, trembling slightly. Her eyes were filled with pain and humility as she spoke. "James, I know I was wrong. I didn't cherish the good you gave me. It's all my fault. Can you give me another chance? Let's start over. Okay. Camila's empty eyes showed a glimmer of hope, her fingers gripping tightly. I looked at her calmly, without any emotion. Camila, we're over. Hearing my answer, it was as if all the strength drained out of her. She knelt in front of the Mu patriarch's grave, sobbing softly. I pulled my arm away and turned to leave, not sparing her another glance. Dark clouds hung in the sky, and a cool breeze blew past, yet I felt lighter than ever. The road ahead was long and full of obstacles, but finally, 12 years after leaving the Mu family's support, I had truly been reborn. When I was 5 years old, I witnessed the exchange of my newborn brother. A stranger's baby was placed in my brother's crib. 20 years later, a disheveled young man appeared before my parents, crying uncontrollably and claiming to be their biological son. To my surprise, he called me Big Brother in front of others, yet behind my back, he shamelessly stole my fiancée. But that wasn't all. The two of them, without any sense of guilt, secretly schemed how to seize the Wang family fortune. However, what they didn't know was that, back then, I quietly swapped my brother back without making a fuss. Chapter 1. I returned from a business trip abroad, and the atmosphere at home felt strange. My parents seemed uneasy, and the house was eerily quiet. Holding the gifts I had brought for the family, I asked, "Where's David? Isn't it the weekend?" "He didn't come home this week." David is my younger brother, 5 years younger than me. He's a sophomore at a local university, and on weekends, he usually comes home unless there's something urgent. As I walked in, I could already picture how he would greet me, probably sneaking up behind the door like a fool to ambush me, then pestering me, "Bro, let's play some games together." But instead of seeing him, I was met with my silent parents. Dad waved me over and said, "George, come here. Your mom and I need to discuss something very important with you." As the eldest son, I had already taken over the family business after entering college. The Wang family is undoubtedly a prestigious one, with a complete family tree and several distinguished figures in its history. My parents' generation, along with the relatives, are all wealthy. Our family's businesses are waiting for me and David to inherit, so we're doing quite well financially. I walked over, puzzled, and asked, "What's going on with you two?" Acting all mysterious. Did David get into some kind of trouble again? David had always been rebellious and hard to manage. When he was in middle school, I often had to clean up his mess. However, he wasn't the type to bully others. He had a bad temper, but he only targeted people who provoked him. He had a philosophy of fighting anyone who crossed him. No matter their age or gender, it was all about fairness. My mom motioned for me to sit down, her face full of complexity as she said, "No, it's much worse than that." I was left utterly confused. Was there something worse than David causing trouble? I cautiously asked, "Are we bankrupt? Which business is it?" Our family has investments in many industries, so I couldn't pinpoint which ones were failing. Dad shook his head. He wore a worried expression as he said, "George, have you ever considered that David might not be our child?" I was speechless. I turned to my mom and asked, "Mom, did you ever do something wrong when you were younger?" Before she could respond, I got a slap on the head. Dad shouted, "What kind of nonsense are you thinking?" His voice raised as he added, "What I mean is, what if David isn't mine? What if he's not your mother's son either?" I replied firmly, "That's impossible." Upon hearing my answer, my mom also looked troubled and said, "Yeah, how could the child we've raised for 20 years not be ours?" Their odd behavior left me with my arms crossed, leaning back as I asked, "What's going on? Who's saying David isn't our son?" Chapter 2. From my parents, I heard the absurd things that happened during my week-long business trip. Just a few days ago, a 20-year-old guy, looking disheveled, appeared in front of my parents, crying and clinging to my dad's leg, saying, "Mom, Dad, I am your real son. Your current youngest son, David, is a fake. His biological mother swapped us when we were born." I rubbed my forehead in disbelief and said, "So you're telling me that some random person shows up claiming to be your real son, and you believe him?" I was getting a headache, and continued, "Give me your phone. I want to check if you've received any scam messages." My mom shook her head, but he accurately described the date and time of David's birth, even knowing the hospital and the doctor who attended him. I replied, "That just means the scammer was well prepared. Besides, this information isn't classified. It wouldn't be surprising if someone remembered or happened to know about it." My mom responded, "We didn't believe him at first, but then he brought out the bracelet your grandma gave David when he was born." Dad added, "You were still young and might not remember, but your grandma specially had bracelets made for both you and David, made from Bodhi seeds. David's current bracelet is a replacement, but the original one, the one your grandma put in his crib, disappeared at some point." Their words suddenly triggered some distant memories. When David was born, I was 5. That day, I had just returned from kindergarten, and the house was empty except for the nanny. I wanted to find my parents, but was told they had gone to the hospital to give birth to my brother or sister. I probably went to visit David the next evening. By then, David had been born for more than 10 hours. I don't remember the exact security measures at the hospital 20 years ago, but I do remember there were plenty of human traffickers at the time. Some were known to steal babies directly from the hospital. At the time, my dad had received a phone call and left to deal with an urgent matter at work. Our relatives, who had originally been excited about the baby, went quiet once my mom became too tired and needed rest. There was supposed to be a nanny watching over the babies, but I couldn't remember why she had left the room at that time. I tiptoed over to look at the crib, where my little brother was lying. He wasn't crying, and his lips were even slightly curled in a calm, composed expression. He looked handsome, just like me. I stared at him for so long, growing tired, and with the dim light in the room, I thought I'd rest a bit. I didn't know why, but I thought my mom's coat hanging on the rack looked so warm and comfortable, so I grabbed it and draped it over myself while I leaned against the bed and fell asleep. But soon, the sound of a door opening startled me awake. I thought it was my dad returning, but quickly realized it wasn't. A woman's figure entered the room. She wasn't the nanny, nor a relative or family friend. She was carrying something, and when I looked closely, I realized it was a baby. She gently placed the baby down, then quietly picked up my brother and walked out. Maybe it was the dim light, and since I was small and hidden in the corner under my mom's coat, she didn't see me. I watched in silence, still half asleep, wondering if I was dreaming. When the soft sound of the door closing reached my ears, I quickly tiptoed to the crib. Despite newborns looking similar, the clothes this baby was wearing were identical to those my brother had been dressed in. But having stared at David for so long, how could I not recognize him? He had been swapped. Realizing something was wrong, I immediately tried to wake my mom, but her breathing was even, and she wouldn't wake up. I opened the door at once and saw the woman's figure turning the corner ahead. I immediately followed her. She entered another room. From inside came her muttering, which I couldn't clearly hear, but I took note of the room number. Not long after, a man entered the room, and the two of them began arguing. He seemed to have taken something from her, and she chased after him. That's when I acted. I quickly opened the door, snuck in, and saw my brother in the crib. I was certain it was David. I carefully picked him up and returned to my mom's room. Along the way, David nodded and pouted, acting all serious, like an old leader giving approval. Once I returned him, I took the stranger's baby and brought him to the other room. The nanny was shocked when she saw me carrying David, and my dad later scolded me when he found out, saying I was causing trouble. As for my mom, she woke up a few hours later, and nothing seemed wrong, so I didn't worry anymore. The whole thing wasn't very clear in my memory, and later on, I even thought it was just a dream. Chapter 3. And now, someone was using the Bodhi seed bracelet my grandma gave David to claim kinship. The memories ended, and I wasn't sure if all the details in my recollection were accurate, but if it were just a dream, then David hadn't been swapped. If it wasn't a dream, then I really did swap him back. I asked, "Where is the guy who came to claim to be our son?" My mom whispered, "We told him to stay at the house on the east side of the lake." I frowned. "Have you done a paternity test? You just let him stay at our house." Mom lowered her head. I didn't dare. Dad also hung his head. They were afraid of the possibility. If the son they'd raised for 20 years wasn't really theirs, how could they sever the bond they had with him? If their real son had been lost for 20 years, how could they make up for that time? I didn't say what I had been thinking. Even though I was sure David was my real brother, memories from when I was 5 weren't necessarily reliable. Only a paternity test would provide solid proof. I quickly came up with a plan and said, "Let's do this. We'll take him for a paternity test as soon as possible until the results come out. There's no need to let David know about this. No one would want to see their family member doubting whether they shared the same bloodline." My parents agreed with my plan. They knew that no matter how hesitant they were, this matter had to be resolved, and the sooner, the better. Mom asked anxiously, "What if the test shows a match?" I looked down at my phone, reading a work email, and casually replied, "We'll report the trafficker to the police, bring him back, and compensate for the time lost. David can come with me. Worst case, David is already capable of looking after himself." But, I added softly, "I still think this whole thing is a farce, but life always surprises you faster than you expect." The very next day, someone called me and said, "George, something happened." I was completely dumbfounded. It was Sunday, and I was supposed to rest, but I didn't. Typically, college students don't have their parents called to school, but today was different. David had gotten into a fight at school. I was told by one of his friends, who called to warn me that David didn't want our parents to know. I was at a loss for words. Who could have expected that this guy, despite being in college, still had such a temper? When I arrived at the police station, it was busy. Among the crowd, I saw David, furious, surrounded by his friends and a very young counselor, probably just a few years older than me. It turned out that they had come to the police station to deal with the school fight. My relaxing weekend was officially ruined. "David," I called out. The angry little guy turned around as soon as he saw me and rushed over, as if he wanted me to mediate. "Bro, you're finally here." I gave him a once-over. Noting there were no serious injuries, just a red hand, I asked, "What's this about you fighting again? You're not a teenager anymore. Can't you just be a little more mature? Look at me, I'm calm under pressure, unaffected by anything. Learn from me. How can I feel at ease when you're like this?" He interrupted loudly. "Bro, stop with the lecture. Willow's been sneaking around with some guy from school. You've been cheated on." I was speechless. Willow, my fiancée. And that's when I saw her in the crowd, the woman I hadn't seen in over a week. Chapter 4. I didn't have any particular needs when it came to relationships, as my upbringing shaped my views. When choosing a partner, the most important thing to me was her family background. Willow was the fiancée I personally selected. She came from a family of similar status, was stunningly beautiful, and both of our parents were pleased with the match. However, we didn't share the same values. For example, she often claimed to want to be an independent woman, to live for herself, but she never worked to improve herself. Instead, she expected me to cater to her whims and pay for her hobbies. I refused to be manipulated by her, and as a result, she would often criticize me for being stubborn and not knowing how to please women. But I wasn't too bothered by this. Compared to shared values, I cared more about her family background. I couldn't expect everyone to think the same way I did. I asked, "Willow, what's going on?" My gaze slowly landed on this beautiful yet distraught girl. She had a distinct slap mark on her pale cheek, and her pure white dress was stained with dirt, giving her a tragic appearance. Standing beside Willow was a stranger, a man who was short and plain, but he looked at Willow with deep affection. Willow, her face flushed, bit her lip and said, "George, your brother is talking nonsense. I was just accompanying a friend to the school, and he came over and started hitting me without knowing the full story." David stepped forward and pointed at Willow, shouting, "You're lying. What friend? Who hugs and cuddles with their friends like that? Is that what your friends do? I'll tell you, if you dare put a green hat on my brother, I won't let you off the hook." David looked furious, like he was ready to strike them again. I turned to the man standing next to Willow and said calmly, "So this is your friend. Which family does he come from? I've never seen him before." Up to this point, my emotions remained controlled. My first instinct was that this man was some rich second-generation heir. Although it's common for wealthy young people to complain about not having love in their lives despite their wealth, it was undeniable that they lived comfortable lives, though happiness was another matter. Naturally, most of our friends came from similar circles, but Willow seemed to freeze for a moment before answering. "He's not from a rich family. He's just a friend I met at a restaurant." The word friend was interesting. Someone you'd met only once could be considered a friend. Someone who hugged and held you could be called a friend. I didn't push the issue, but my brother seemed to disapprove of Willow's explanation. He retorted, "What kind of friend is that close? Do you have no shame?" It was clear that David didn't approve of this engagement. He had opposed it from the very beginning. Before we were engaged, Willow's reputation was already questionable, with rumors swirling that she was promiscuous, had countless boyfriends, and was constantly cheating. But those indulgent heirs in wealthy families seemed to enjoy such drama, so it was no surprise that they were attracted to someone like Willow. For me, engagement and marriage were different. Our two families had been working together on a project for over 2 years, and there was still about half a year left. I thought there was no need to rush into anything. We could figure it out after the project was completed. But David didn't know all of this. He thought I was truly in love with Willow. Once the counselor and police officers realized we were all acquainted, they breathed a sigh of relief and suggested, "Since this is a personal issue, it's best to resolve it privately. No more fighting, please." Willow's decision to call the police seemed impulsive. She knew very well that making a big deal out of this wouldn't be good for anyone, especially considering she was in the wrong. She should have agreed to settle things quietly, but to my surprise, she pointed angrily at David and said, "Solve it, unless he apologizes to me." Chapter 5. Now that was crossing the line. I lowered my head, suppressing my desire to scold my brother, and calmly said, "Willow, are you asking my brother to apologize for attacking you because you were caught cheating?" Before Willow could answer, the man next to her stepped forward and tried to explain, "Bro, Willow and I aren't like that. Please don't misunderstand." I scoffed and gestured toward the angry David, saying, "This guy here, stop trying to get close to me. My brother is right here, so don't try to butter me up." Finally, Willow spoke up with a sense of relief. "George, how long are you going to keep pretending this guy is your brother? Didn't your parents tell you? David is not your real brother. He's the real one." She pointed at the man standing beside her. I froze, my eyes shifting between Willow and the man, and I began to have an inkling of his identity. Before I could say anything, David spoke first, his voice tinged with anger. "Looks like I didn't hit you hard enough. You're making up all these stories, so now I'm not your real brother. then who is? In a warm family, no one would ever imagine that they weren't their parents' real child, or that their brother wasn't their biological brother. Yet, in front of me, these absurd claims were being made. I paused. Willow and David continued arguing. Willow seemed to have some kind of deep resentment toward David and pointed at him, saying, "You don't know, do you, David? Your real mother switched you and Makoto when you two were born. You're not a member of the Wong family." Makoto, that name. My parents had mentioned that the person claiming to be a long-lost relative was named Makoto. I never expected that this person would be in the same university as David. I rubbed my temples, trying to think through the situation. What role did Willow play in all this? At this point, we were still in the police station. David's counselor and the other officers were present, and a few of David's friends, people from our social circle, were also there. At first, I hadn't planned to let David know the truth until everything was cleared up, but now it seemed like more people knew about it than I anticipated. David, still skeptical about Willow's claims, clenched his fists and turned toward me. He asked, "Is what she said true?" I knew David as well as he knew me. In those few seconds, he was undoubtedly trying to read my expression to figure out the truth. My brief silence was enough to answer him. His clenched fists slowly loosened, and he stood there, stunned, as he struggled to come to terms with the absurdity of the situation. Chapter 6. I stared coldly at Willow, but before I could speak, Makoto, standing beside her, spoke up again. "Bro, I'm your real brother. I met Willow by chance when I heard she knew you and your parents. I asked her to help me contact them. Now it made sense. I had always wondered how Makoto managed to get in touch with my parents without me even knowing." Makoto was filled with resentment and hatred, which I could clearly see. He despised David and loathed the fact that someone had been living the life he should have had for the past 20 years. Even though he tried to hide it, a small hint of that hatred still leaked out. I said, "I remember my parents scheduled a paternity test with you for tomorrow. Until the results are in, I have no reason to believe you're my real brother." That was essentially confirming what Willow had said. David's expression was hard to describe, his emotions were all over the place, and he didn't know how to react to this revelation. His friends looked at us with wide eyes, clearly shocked by what they were hearing. I continued, "Willow, no matter how much you argue, this has nothing to do with you. Why are you butting in?" Willow reacted strongly, angry as she retorted, "George, I must have been blind to be with you. I thought you were just cold and overly rational, not knowing how to be considerate towards girls. But I never imagined you'd be so heartless, rejecting your own brother and siding with an outsider like this. Cold. Maybe. I wasn't about to be like her exes, pampering her every whim. I was born into a wealthy family, but that didn't mean I was going to be a simp for any woman. Compared to the back-and-forth struggles among the younger generation in the Liu family, the Wang family's estate had only me and David to carry it forward. From a young age, we were taught to have the final say. So I said, "Willow, are you crazy, or am I? No matter if he's my real brother or not, it doesn't change the fact that you cheated. So, what? Should I side with you two in your affair instead of with David?" She was speechless. When she finally tried to say something, I had already turned to David and said, "David, let's go home." On the way back, I called my parents and told them about what happened today, reminding them to bring someone for the test tomorrow. David was completely despondent, silent, like the day he found out, back in middle school, that his favorite meat floss sandwich actually had meat in it. His worldview had collapsed then, and it felt like it was happening all over again. When we got home, our parents were there. Seeing us walk in, they tried to act normal, pretending to care about us as they greeted us and offered us dinner. But David was much quieter than usual and didn't say much. It was driving me crazy. Later that night, just as I was about to go to sleep, I heard a knock on my bedroom door. "Come in." The door opened, and my 20-year-old brother stood there, holding his gaming laptop. It was the same one I gave him when he was 18 and got into university. I told him that he needed to balance work and rest, so he spent the whole summer dragging me into gaming sessions. From co-op single-player games to online team battles, we were as close as brothers could be. I looked up and, for a moment, it felt like I was transported back to that summer. When he held his laptop, ready to play all night with me, he tentatively asked, "Bro, I found a new game. Want to play together?" Although I hadn't stayed up late for a long time, I still said, "Come in." David's face showed a faint, barely noticeable flicker of joy. He quickly set up the laptop, bringing in snacks and drinks. He didn't say much, as if he was just here to play, but his usually chatty nature, always cracking jokes and teasing me while playing, was nowhere to be seen. Tonight, he was oddly quiet, almost cautious. He didn't steal any equipment, nor did he poke fun at me like usual. It had been a long time since I'd seen him so serious. After a while, as we defeated a boss and I was picking up loot, he suddenly spoke in a low voice. "Bro," I replied. "What's up?" He asked, "What if I'm really not your real brother?" I said, "You are." He responded, I mean, what if? I firmly patted him on the back of his head and said, there's no what if. Chapter 7. We had arranged to go for the paternity test, and I went to pick up Makoto. However, when I entered his apartment, I was surprised to see Willow there, having breakfast with him. When they saw us, both of them looked flustered for a moment, their actions betraying their nervousness. My dad's face darkened as he asked, Willow, what are you doing here? Yesterday, I had mentioned Willow to my parents but hadn't gone into detail, so they only knew that she was a friend of mine. Willow, not daring to act up in front of my parents, bit her lip and said, Uncle, Aunt, I heard you're going for the test today, so I came to wait for you here at Makoto's. After all, we're all going to be family eventually. Family eventually? I forced a smile, wondering what kind of tricks Makoto had used to convince Willow that he was the lost Wong family son. Willow's actions were crossing a line. She was still my fiancée in name, and even if she wanted to join us, there was no reason for her to be alone at Makoto's place, especially since this was my parents' house. Today's agenda was private and couldn't involve outsiders, so I had to be the one to drive. As we drove, Makoto started telling us about his life. He said his foster parents treated him horribly, his foster mother was miserly, and his foster father was an alcoholic who abused him. As he grew older, they even tried to force him to drop out of school and work. He worked hard and eventually managed to get into university. At first, it sounded like a sad but inspiring story of overcoming adversity, but my nature made it hard to believe everything I heard. Humans are inherently selective with their stories, they always highlight what benefits them. So I asked, how did you find out about your true origins? Makoto didn't seem surprised by the question, perhaps because he had already shared his story with others before. He replied, last year, when I went home, I accidentally saw my foster mother's phone. She had secretly taken photos of David and other pictures in an album labeled, Good Son. I saw David's wrist and noticed he was wearing a bracelet that looked exactly like mine. Later, when she was drunk, she cursed and said that her son was living a life of luxury, while David was serving her. Makoto continued. I asked my foster father, and he said that I was supposed to be born a few days later, but my mother insisted on delivering me on that day. The story sounded very convincing. Makoto's bracelet was real, and even my parents couldn't help but imagine the pain their real son must have gone through. I asked, before you contacted my parents, didn't you think about getting a paternity test to confirm if you were really their son? Makoto froze and stammered, I didn't think of it. It made sense. On one side was the possibility of becoming a rich heir, and on the other side, the reality of a poor family that had neglected him. Who wouldn't subconsciously avoid the latter? Suddenly, Willow spoke up. George, why are you questioning your brother so much? Whether or not he's your real brother is determined by blood. You shouldn't be so harsh just because you get along with David. I smiled and said, that's right, it's determined by blood. Then let the paternity test decide. Chapter 8. The results of the paternity test would take 3 days. The next day, there was a banquet to attend. Sue's little princess was turning 18, and she had invited our whole family. Our two families had some ties, so of course, we had to show up. My brother had a closer relationship with the birthday girl, they were only 2 years apart. While our parents mingled with Sue's elders, I exchanged a few pleasantries and then found a quiet corner to drink. David had already been pulled aside by the birthday girl for a private chat. He seemed off these past couple of days. Even when I asked him to play games with me, he didn't seem interested. Every time I asked him what was wrong, he just said nothing. A light, melodious voice called out from behind me, George. Turning around, I saw who it was. I greeted her politely. Miss Sue, long time no see. Anna was wearing a black knitted dress. The low-cut design highlighted her collarbones, while the fitted waist and hip-hugging style accentuated her curves. She walked toward me gracefully, casually brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, revealing her almost perfect face. Her makeup was impeccable, her features striking, and her mischievous eyes sparkled with an alluring light. In the next moment, she moved in too close for comfort. She leaned casually against the railing beside me, then teasingly raised a hand to near my neck, only to playfully snatch the handkerchief from my pocket. I grabbed her wrist, my voice taking on a warning tone. Anna. She blinked, then returned the handkerchief, but with a sly grin. She tiptoed to my ear and whispered in a sweet, familiar voice. I saw a guy bring your fiancé in just now. He seemed like he wanted to make a move on your brother. I asked, what does that have to do with you? She smiled lightly and said, I also saw that guy put his arm around Willow's shoulders. You used to get jealous just when other people looked at me. So, has your possessiveness been cured? I was speechless. A proper ex should be as silent as the dead. Anna and I had been together back in college, just after we turned 18. It was my first serious relationship, and I invested a lot of emotion into it. She wasn't any less possessive than I was. We broke up due to some conflicts, and she went abroad. After that, we lost contact. We were both ambitious and unwilling to bow to anyone, especially when it came to our careers. So, when she left the country, I didn't try to stop her. But the night I got engaged to Willow last year, she called me, I answered. But neither of us said anything at first. After a long pause, she finally asked, "Do you like her?" I replied, "That has nothing to do with Miss Sue." Anna snorted on the other end and confidently said, "If she's not the one you like, you won't last long." I hung up, not bothering to argue. Now, it seemed like she had been right. This engagement might not even last 2 years. I asked, "When did you come back to the country?" Anna replied, "I just landed this morning." It seemed she had really put some effort into attending her sister's coming-of-age celebration. I said, "Miss Sue, I need to go check on something downstairs. I'll excuse myself for now." From where I was standing, I could see some commotion below. However, she didn't let go of my arm. Instead, pulling herself closer to me, she murmured, "Don't go. It's fine. There are security guards downstairs. They won't dare to do anything." I looked down at her and asked, "Anna, what do you mean? Are you trying to be the other woman?" She responded, "Willow and you don't match. The Liu family is very patriarchal, and she has a younger brother and even a cousin. Marrying you is just her way of finding someone to depend on for the future, keeping her luxurious lifestyle intact. She won't help your career in any way. So, why would you want to team up with an unfaithful partner like her?" She continued, "I'm different. In terms of views, my grandfather never valued sons over daughters. In terms of career, Sue is just as capable as the Liu family. And as for family, I've only been with you once, and I'm much cleaner than she is." I was speechless. Going out has clearly spoiled her. She was blunt and tactless now. Chapter 9. I pushed Anna away and went downstairs to check the situation, but I was too late. The earlier conflict seemed to have calmed down for now. People around me looked at me in surprise, hesitant to speak, as if they wanted to ask something but didn't dare. As I passed through the crowd, I vaguely heard my name and my brother's, mixed with some whispers about the fake young master and rumors. Willow had actually brought Makoto to Anna's coming-of-age party. Before this, the rumors about David and Makoto's identities had already spread, likely started by Willow or perhaps some of David's friends. Either way, Willow was the one to blame. I couldn't find my parents, and my brother was probably still with the birthday girl. I made my way to the lounge, where the hallway was carpeted, and my footsteps made no sound. As I passed a door left slightly ajar, I heard Willow's voice inside. Her voice choked with sobs. "Makoto, were all those times you said you liked me a lie?" Makoto replied, "I do like you, but you're still my brother's fiancé." Willow sobbed and continued, "Why do you call him brother? Does he even see you as a younger brother? He's a cold-blooded monster. Can't you see that? George doesn't like me, and I never liked him either. Our engagement was forced by our families. I'm like a puppet, forced to marry a stranger I don't even love." Makoto said, "Would your parents ever agree to marry you to me?" Willow stopped crying and answered seriously, "Makoto, our engagement is for family business. You're from the Wang family. If you go back to the Wang family, I could be with you, too." Willow's words made me think back to the time shortly after our engagement last year. Every day, she would message me, asking me to take her to movies, shop, pick her up and drop her off at work, buy her cars, houses, and jewelry, and even charter a yacht to take her out to sea. She certainly didn't act like she didn't like me back then, but I wasn't an easy mark, so I told her straight, this was a political marriage, not a sugar daddy situation. It was about mutual benefits, not one-sided sacrifices. After that, she grew cold toward me. Now, I understood what Anna had said. Willow wasn't interested in me. She was just looking for someone who would be willing to spend money on her. She wanted someone who would play the simp for her. Inside, Ito, who thought he had won the girl's heart, was still fantasizing about a wonderful future with Willow. I turned and quietly left the scene. As I turned, I noticed Anna standing not far away, her eyes filled with a knowing smile. After leaving the hallway, Anna teased, "Seems like things are pretty lively at your place lately." I sneered, "If you want a good show, go to the theater." Anna asked, "When are you going to call off the engagement?" I turned to her and asked, "When did I say I'm calling off the engagement? Even if I do, what does it have to do with you?" She replied, "A mistress has to be prepared to take the throne at any time." She then hugged my arm and leaned her shoulder against me. I was speechless. A trip abroad really lowered her moral standards. Chapter 10. I dragged my disoriented brother, David, back home from the birthday girl's room. I patted him on the shoulder and said, "What's there to worry about? I've told you 100 times, you're my brother." David sighed deeply, looking utterly defeated. "Bro, what if it's not true? You didn't see how Willow and Makoto were earlier. They definitely have something going on. If Makoto is really your brother, once he goes back to the Wang family, he and Willow could team up to fight for the family fortune. What if, in the end, you get kicked out too? What will you do then?" Before I could respond, he gave me a dark look and added, "If that happens, You better be ready to send me some prison meals. I was about to say something when I slapped the back of his head and said, "What's this? Don't you want to play games with your brother anymore? Stop coming up with these crazy ideas." People's hearts are often biased. The Wong family had too many assets. There was more than enough to go around for both David and me. He was playful and hadn't yet focused on managing the company. We weren't in a rush for him to step into that role. The plan was to let him gradually take on more responsibility after he graduated from college. I rubbed the back of his head and sighed. "In 2 days, the test results will come out. You're definitely my brother." Both my parents and David didn't understand where my confidence came from. I couldn't explain the memories I had from when I was 5, so I was leaving it to the paternity test to shut everyone up. David might think I supported Makoto and my parents doing the paternity test because I had doubts, but that wasn't the case. It was the simplest way to resolve this issue. Some people needed to face the consequences of their actions, even if they hadn't caused any direct harm to my family in the past 20 years. But I had underestimated the depths of human malice. The day David went back to school, something happened to him there as well. A friend of his, a university professor, forwarded me a post from their school's social wall. The post read, "A second-year finance major has a really steady mentality. He usually lives in luxury, but it turns out he's a fake young master who's been living off someone else's fortune. How can he still have the nerve to attend classes? Did he never think that the real young master, who was switched at birth 20 years ago, would end up studying at the same university as him? This imposter has enjoyed 20 years of wealth and glory." My friend said, "George, this sounds like David. Your family's situation is already spreading at school. This doesn't seem right." It didn't seem right. Normally, people wouldn't spread rumors about something that could have a negative impact on them, so it wasn't likely to be David. It must have been Makoto. My friend, being a teacher, knew many students. Soon enough, I saw people bandying about rumors, trying to figure out the identity of the fake young master. I asked him to contact the school to have the post deleted. "Consider this a favor. I'll treat you to dinner sometime." He laughed and said, "This doesn't count as a favor. These unverified rumors shouldn't even be posted in the first place. I'll contact the teachers and have them remove it." He added, "But even if it's deleted, it probably won't stop the gossip." I understood. What I didn't get was, if they were so sure they had been switched at birth, why couldn't they just wait patiently for the results of the paternity test? Chapter 11. I took my parents to the house on the east side of the lake to meet Makoto. After last night, I had David take a leave and go home. Even without solid proof, some people had already believed the story about this fake young master through the online gossip. David was the president of the school's weightlifting club, and his contact information wasn't a secret. Once it was leaked by someone with ulterior motives. He began to receive constant harassment starting last night, people adding him as a friend to insult him or even calling him to curse at him. It got him so worked up that he almost wanted to meet someone offline to fight. So, I had him take leave and confiscated his phone. Now he's stuck at home playing on his computer, killing time. I don't think these people, including Makoto, shouldn't be taught a lesson. But David tends to resort to violence when confronted, which isn't wise. A knife needs a sheath, and I'm my brother's sheath. When Makoto saw me and my parents, he immediately put on a smile and said, "Mom, Dad, big brother, you came to see me." His acceptance of his new family was much quicker than I expected. My parents were still not used to the way he addressed them, and they wanted to say something, but feared it would make him uncomfortable. As parents, they hadn't really done anything wrong, but until the results of the paternity test came out, they were still hanging on to that lingering uncertainty, worried. Only I wasn't affected by it. After a few pleasantries, I calmly asked, "Makoto, have you seen anything on the school's social wall?" His face stiffened for a moment, then he asked in an unclear tone, "No, why? What's wrong, big brother?" I said. "Someone anonymously posted about you and David on your school's social wall, completely humiliating him. It's like they hate him. I've had the post deleted, but some people have already traced it back and started insulting him. Do you know about this?" I kept an eye on Makoto's expression. By the time I got to the second half, his eyes weren't exactly natural. Perhaps there was even a hint of satisfaction. Makoto's face reddened, and he gritted his teeth, saying, "I had no idea about this. Big brother, are you implying that I posted it on the social wall? Is that the kind of person you think I am in your hearts?" My mom spoke up first, saying, "Makoto, George means to ask if you've told any classmates or friends about this." His gaze flickered for a moment. After a long pause, he quietly said, "I mentioned it to my roommate before. Maybe they were just standing up for me." I had checked the comments on that social wall post, and it was indeed possible that some of them were from people who were close to him. My dad said, "Until the paternity test results come out, it's too hasty to spread this information." He thought about it for a while before adding this. It wasn't a harsh statement, but it seemed to strike a chord with Makoto. He suddenly stood up, trembling, his fists clenched and shaking uncontrollably. He said angrily, "Dad, Do you also suspect that I did this on purpose, whether it was intentional or not? David stole 20 years of my life. I should have been raised by you, to be your son and brother. Shouldn't I resent him? My dad sighed and said. But even if you two were switched at birth 20 years ago, David was just a newborn at the time. He couldn't control his life and didn't even know his own identity. The ones you should be resentful of are the ones who caused all of this, and the parents who failed to protect you, which is us. Makoto's emotions became even more agitated, and his whole body trembled as he gasped and said, "But he's the one who benefited from it all. Even now, you still treat him like your own son, don't you? Everything he has should have been mine." Why? His emotions were so raw and genuine that even my parents could tell he wasn't lying. It was the truth. Makoto had been consumed by the story of his swapped life, his genuine resentment aimed at the person who had lived the 20 years he should have had, as well as the culprits behind it all. Chapter 12. What are you doing? A woman's voice suddenly rang out from behind. I didn't notice when Willow had entered the room. She hurried over to support Makoto, who was trembling uncontrollably. Looking at Makoto's state, she began crying and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Wong, how can you treat Makoto like this? He's been through so much outside. Did you even ask about it? Now that he's finally back home, not only does he not feel the warmth of a family, but you're also interrogating him. Makoto doesn't owe you anything." Willow's tears fell like money down the drain, one after another, as if she were a weeping flower. Makoto seemed to play along with her, sighing and comforting her. "It's okay, Willow. I'm used to it." I couldn't be bothered to listen to their act. I directly interrupted. "Makoto, did you tell Willow the password to this house?" I asked this because I was sure I had locked the door when I came in. Both of them froze for a moment at the mention of the password. My parents also finally reacted to the awkwardness of Willow's sudden appearance. She had accompanied us for the paternity test earlier, and now, here she was again, out of nowhere. It was hard not to make assumptions. My mom furrowed her brow and asked, "Willow, how did you get here?" Willow remained silent, and Makoto quickly interjected, "Mom, I told Willow I wasn't used to being here before, and she said she'd come to check on me for my brother. Since she's my brother's fiancée, and will be family, I thought it was only right to tell her." My parents weren't fools, and although they were caught in an awkward situation with their son, they weren't easily deceived. I smiled and said, "So you know she's my fiancée? She doesn't even know the password to my place but knows yours. Does that seem reasonable to you?" Willow clearly felt insulted. She snapped at me. "George, how can you slander me like that? Makoto and I are completely innocent. I was just trying to help repair the relationship between you brothers. Since you clearly don't care about him, that's why I came to check on him." Innocent. They'd already made their commitment to each other, I lightly said. "Is that so? I don't believe it." I quickly added before they could say anything, "How about I take a look at your chat history?" The two of them fell silent. After a long pause, Willow pulled out the big card and said, "George, the most important thing in a marriage is trust. Checking someone's phone is a sign of distrust and an insult. I'll let you see our chat history, but if you find nothing, I'll break off the engagement, and the dowry won't be refunded." I asked, confused. "And what if there is something?" She replied, "If that's the case, I'll return the dowry and agree to end the engagement." I was speechless. So, in the end, she wouldn't lose anything if she cheated. The punishment was simply returning what was mine. I rubbed my temples and said, "Fine, bring it to me. Let's show everyone," she retorted. "Checking my phone shows a lack of trust. If you don't trust me, then just end the engagement. Why the need for humiliation? What a load of nonsense." I said, "Are you trying to play both sides? Fine. I'll annul the marriage, and you won't get to keep the dowry." I turned to my parents and said, "Mom, Dad, call Uncle Lou and his family. Let's resolve this today so we don't ruin anyone's chance at marriage." My parents had clearly realized that Willow wasn't a good person, and with the possibility that Makoto might be their son and Willow was clearly entangled with him, they didn't hesitate to solve this issue. At their age, could they not see through Willow's intentions? Willow had originally just said that offhandedly, but when she saw my parents agree and start calling her family, she froze in place. Then, after seeing Makoto's expression, she seemed to decide not to stop them. Chapter 13. The Liu family wasn't willing to break off the engagement, but I'm not sure what Willow said to them. When they met us, their attitude suddenly became warm and friendly. They said, "Since the two children are no longer interested in each other, let's call off the engagement. In the future, they can both marry whoever they choose." Willow's mother also didn't show much change in her attitude toward us. She smiled at my parents and said, "It's unfortunate that we won't become one family, but I hope our two families will have more chances to work together in the future." It was all just polite conversation. Both sides kept a friendly tone when it came to matters of cooperation. Breaking off the engagement was actually a very simple matter. Both parties came to an agreement, and it was announced to friends and family. That night after the engagement was officially called off, I received a phone call from Anna Wong. I heard you're single now, I replied. Yeah, and what does that have to do with you? The woman on the other end of the line laughed lightly and said, of course it has to do with me. Now that the spot's open, I'm aiming to be the new mistress. Before I could respond, she suddenly switched to a high-pitched voice and said, wait until you're done with things at home. Come out and have dinner with me. Okay, it's been so long since we've eaten together. I really miss you, Wong. I was speechless. This woman used to be so arrogant. Where did she learn to act like this? I hung up the phone. The next day, the paternity test results came out. We decided to go to the testing center ourselves to get the official paper report and reveal the truth right there. Of course, all the involved parties had to be present, me, my parents, David, and Makoto. Willow, for some reason, also followed along, almost as if she wanted to cheer Makoto on, but it didn't matter. My parents and David were both nervous, as if that report would shatter the peace and harmony of our family. When the results were handed to me, everyone's gaze immediately focused on the paper. I looked at Makoto and calmly said, Makoto, this is the paternity test report from a certified institution. There's no possibility of forgery. You should understand that, right? Makoto didn't understand why I said that, but he nodded in agreement. I understand. Willow sneered and said, George, stop dragging it out. Just open it. It was clear that she was eager to marry into the Wong family. Just as I was about to open it, a disheveled middle-aged woman suddenly barged in. She scanned the room before locking her gaze on Makoto. Rushing forward and attempting to hit him, she yelled, you ungrateful child. How dare you abandon your real parents and fight for someone else's parents? The woman slapped Makoto across the face without warning. As she raised her hand for a second strike, Makoto's eyes flashed with fury. He kicked her to the ground and followed it with 2 more heavy blows. The next second, my parents rushed over to stop him, asking, Makoto, calm down. Who is she? Why did she hit you? The middle-aged woman raised her head, her sharp gaze unmistakable as she said, I'm his mother. Makoto scoffed. You call yourself a mother? You're nothing but a human trafficker. My parents finally understood what was going on. The woman spat. Makoto, you good for nothing. Come home right now. Don't make me call your father to slap some sense into you. You dream too much. You sit around all day doing nothing, thinking you're some rich young master. I'll tell you, our family's been poor for generations, and you're no different. You don't deserve anything. Do you hear me? Go to the factory and work like your father did. My parents stared at her, as though trying to recall if they'd ever met someone like her in the past. After a moment, they shook their heads. They didn't know her, meaning there was no grudge between them. I studied the woman's face and, even after 20 years, couldn't recall her clearly. Her shape, her features, everything about her was unfamiliar. It dawned on me that this was the woman who had nearly changed my brother's and my family's destiny. Chapter 14. The middle-aged woman wasn't unattractive, and she probably looked good when she was younger. I don't know if it's because of my bias, but I thought her features bore some resemblance to Makoto's, but overall, it wasn't very noticeable. Makoto, on the other hand, had inherited the best qualities from both his parents and had a decent appearance. The woman said to my parents, this useless boy's lost his mind over money. He's my son. How could he possibly be yours? My parents were unable to comprehend how a mother could call her own son a waste. My mom asked, then what about that bracelet of his? The woman quickly replied, I found it a long time ago. I thought it was fake, so I just put it in a drawer. I didn't know he stole it. Makoto spat on the ground and, with a triumphant glint in his eyes, laughed loudly. Keep making things up. I heard you say it yourself. You swapped me with a rich family's child. You said you learned about their background during the prenatal checkup and decided to switch us. The paternity test is out now. Nothing you say can change that. All your scheming has been for nothing. He wanted the woman who had altered his life to watch as her lie unraveled before everyone. Seeing her plans fall apart brought him satisfaction. The middle-aged woman, upon hearing this, looked at the report in my hand with a defensive expression. She immediately tried to cover up. I've always said he's my real son. Why don't you believe me? Why would I raise him if he's not my son? I could have just dumped him somewhere. If my father hadn't stopped Makoto, he would have probably used the woman as a punching bag by now. Makoto's eyes were burning with fury as he roared. Shut up. You couldn't have had a child. You needed someone to support you in your old age. The woman, enraged by the truth, lunged at Makoto, but was stopped. Thinking about how she had once swapped babies and even considered abandoning him, my gaze turned cold. I said, Lady, are you sure Makoto's your biological son? I pointed toward David and added, because, according to him, my brother seems to be your real son. David, who was being pointed out, also gave the woman a fierce look. It was clear that he was burning with anger as well. Of course, who could feel any warmth toward a woman who had abused her own son, calling him names and treating him badly? I noticed that when the woman looked at David, the malice in her gaze toward Makoto seemed to fade. Perhaps, after all these years, She hadn't realized something was wrong. I said indifferently, "Since everyone's here, let's reveal the result." The woman instinctively reached for the paternity test report in my hand, but I moved it away. She screamed, "I've told you. Makoto is my son. Why do you need a paternity test?" The more she insisted, the more pleased Makoto and Willow looked, while my parents and brother appeared increasingly solemn. In front of everyone, I opened the 2 paternity test reports and flipped straight to the page with the results. The room fell silent for a moment. My parents asked in unison, "What does the result say?" Chapter 15. I handed the paternity test report over and gestured for them to take a look themselves. Everyone gathered around except for David, the patient who refused to look at the diagnosis, and the woman who kept insisting Makoto was her biological son. The first to look at it were my parents. After reading it, their expressions tightened, and they said nothing. The report was then passed to Makoto and Willow, who were eager to see the results. After focusing on the test results, both of them looked at each other, their faces full of disbelief. They spoke in unison. "How is this possible?" Makoto couldn't accept the truth. He flipped through the 2 paternity test reports repeatedly, staring at the 2 lines of text. After a long pause, he suddenly looked up at me, asking angrily, "Did you not want me to go back home and deliberately tamper with the results?" Then he quickly turned to David, his voice sharp. "It must be you. You're afraid I'll come back and take everything you have. So you messed with the results, right?" David looked completely confused. The paternity test report fell from my hands, only to be picked up by a slightly rough hand. Moments later, another voice echoed, "How is this possible?" The middle-aged woman, who had repeatedly claimed that Makoto was her biological son, read the result aloud to herself, excluding Laura as Makoto's biological mother, excluding Martin as Makoto's biological father. Her temperament wasn't great to begin with, and now she was tugging at Makoto's hand, either crying or laughing, saying, "You're not their child. How could you not be? How could you possibly be my son?" I couldn't help but think to myself, if he were truly your biological son, you wouldn't be so upset right now. David, who had finally gathered the courage to look at the paternity test report, glanced at it before happily jumping onto my back and exclaiming, "Old bro, he's not mine. Then I must be your real kid, right?" I smiled. Of course, I had noticed that in the past few days, my little brother had been acting strangely. The usually confident and cheerful guy was now barely interested in gaming. The 3 people who couldn't accept the truth were still immersed in their own worlds. At this moment, I spoke up. "Are you all wondering? You went into my mom's hospital room and swapped the baby. But now that the paternity test results are out, how come the child you've been raising isn't my parents' biological son?" As soon as I said this, everyone's gaze snapped to me, especially the middle-aged woman, who was staring at me with an intense focus, even though she had been lucky and hadn't let my brother end up abandoned. What if I hadn't discovered what she did back then? She had intended to harm, and should I simply pretend it never happened because she failed? Now that it had been brought to light, this bullet from 20 years ago was about to hit her squarely between the eyes. Under the gaze of the woman who had believed for so long that her biological son was living a life of wealth, I slowly smiled and said, "When you went into the hospital room back then, didn't you notice me?" She froze in place. I continued, "I swapped the baby in your crib with the one in mine." It didn't matter how much resentment she had held toward children from wealthy families over the years. All of it had been unleashed on her biological son. Chapter 16. You're talking nonsense. The woman tried to struggle and lunge at me, but was immediately restrained by my brother, who grabbed her wrist. I turned to Makoto and asked, "Do you remember when I asked you about your blood type?" He looked up at me. I said calmly, "Both of my parents are type A blood. How could they possibly have a child with type B blood? Even if the swap had worked back then. My family does health checks every year. There's no way your blood type could have been hidden." Makoto didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He tugged at the corner of his mouth in disbelief. After enduring years of abuse and degradation from his biological mother, he had finally found a reasonable explanation, that his mother was a wicked person, and that he had suffered for all these years simply because he wasn't her biological son. He had been swapped with a wealthy family's child. Finally, he found the origin of his suffering and the reason for his twisted upbringing. But now, the truth was that he was indeed her biological son. His biological mother had raised him as someone else's child and had vented all her frustrations on him. He was pitiful, but I couldn't empathize or feel sympathy. If his blood type had been A or O and he had been swapped into my family, what would have happened to my real brother? Now, Makoto was living in wealth that didn't belong to him, while my family and I would have given him everything, while my real brother would have suffered. After all, who in an average family would think to do a paternity test? I called to my parents and brother to get ready to leave. As I was about to step out the door, I turned back and said, "By the way, I'll send someone to pack your things at the house in East Lake. You're moving out today. And as for the rumors and slanders against my brother, I will be having everyone who's involved held accountable." On the way back, my mom chided me. George, I can't believe you didn't tell me and your dad about such a big thing before. Were you not afraid your brother really got swapped? My dad also chimed in. I always praised you for being mature and responsible, but you kept your mouth shut like this. How could you keep such a thing from us? You scared me half to death. He paused for a moment, then couldn't help but add, 5 years old and already so capable, just like me. He was immediately smacked by my mom. Finally, the heavy atmosphere at home was finally lifted. My parents had bought a bunch of things for my brother in the past few days, thinking about how, 20 years ago, their son had almost been swapped out. They couldn't help but try to make up for it. It was their oversight. Otherwise, no one would have had the opportunity to do such a thing. My dad said I had done something big, even though it was something I did when I was 5, but they still wanted to reward me. He decided to reward me with a company. I was speechless. I seriously suspected that he and my mom were planning to retire soon. With the truth now revealed, the necessary matters were being handled. After the things at the East Lake house were packed, they were taken away. No matter what Makoto said, I had already blocked and deleted him from my parents' phones. I also lectured my parents, saying, in the future, don't bring such shady people into our house. It's like a mess. My parents, feeling guilty, didn't argue. Next, I took care of David's phone. I had a technician track down everyone who had been insulting my brother online. Many of them were students from the same school, and some had shared screenshots from social media marketing accounts that had spread the rumors. I reported the situation to the police. Anyone involved would not get off easy. Spreading false information without verifying its truth should be a lesson. If the police couldn't handle it, I'd sue them all. My family had more than enough money to deal with this. The involvement of so many students got the attention of the school principal and other school leaders. I'm sure the calls they made to me wore out their tongues. In the end, we reached an agreement. The school's official account issued a public statement to refute the rumors and announce the punishments for the slanderers and cyberbullies. The involved students recorded apology videos, each with a written self-reflection. As for the non-student netizens, my family's legal team would handle them. My brother still wanted to finish his studies at that school, so we couldn't let it get too ugly. If he didn't want to, he could always study abroad. Chapter 17. I didn't really care about Makoto's situation, but I couldn't avoid hearing about it from others. The incident started because of him. His roommate was the one who posted on the school's social wall, but it was true that he had spread lies. Now that everything was exposed as false, even his roommates, out of misguided enthusiasm, stepped up and took the blame. All of them were disciplined. Makoto had incited others to cyberbully my brother, and the malicious backlash ended up affecting him. The students who were involved isolated him, and in the end, Makoto couldn't handle the pressure and dropped out. I later heard that he went to find Willow, but Willow had always been interested in him because of his Wong family background. Her real goal was to marry into the Wong family and become a rich wife. Now that her hopes were dashed, she naturally wasn't interested in him anymore. The worst part was that Willow had lost the engagement with our family and was severely scolded by her elders. Not long ago, she even tried to reconcile with me. However, that call was answered by Anna. I watched as she put the phone on speaker, and on the other end, Willow was trying to coax and apologize in a pitiful voice. After a while, Anna laughed and said, "Sorry, our young Master Wong isn't lacking women. It's a bit too late to regret now, don't you think? After all, I'm better at holding him than you are." And with that, she hung up. Regardless of how frantic Willow sounded on the other side, I walked over and picked up the phone, only to find that Willow had already been blocked. I asked, "Jealous?" Anna snuggled into my arms and said dismissively, "Jealous? Her? I can tolerate her acting spoiled because of her status, but when she's not even pampered and still acting up, I can't stand it. She looks like someone with a developmental disorder." I was speechless. This girl could kill with just her words. "George." Anna called my name. She asked, "When are you going to introduce me to your parents?" This was the girl who had shown up late one night to offer warmth. I couldn't resist the temptation, and one thing led to another, spending a wild night together. Now, she wouldn't leave my house, insisting that I had to take responsibility for her. I replied, "You already know my parents, so just go see them yourself." She snuggled into my arms and rubbed her head against me, saying, "Only if you take me." Anna had been a bit upset lately. She looked at her phone, pouting, and said, "I told your brother not to stay at home playing games all the time. I suggested he go out and hang out with Yoyochu, that young people should communicate more and go out, but he said I had ulterior motives. Can you believe him? I've been arguing and making up with you for so many years, treating him like my own brother, and this is what I get. You need to do something about it." I commented, "You really do have bad intentions." These past few nights, my brother can't even find anyone to play games with. The whole thing about getting back together with Anna wasn't kept a secret from my brother, but he had a huge reaction to it. Not long ago, when I got acute gastritis, David skipped class to come over and cooked a hot 5-course meal for me. He was so proud of himself and said to Anna, "No one knows how to take care of my brother better than me. We're like real brothers." Anna, after a moment of stunned silence, sat down and tasted David's cooking. In the end, she gave him a thumbs up, complimenting his culinary skills. That really pissed my brother off. David privately complained to me, "She's just a trashy woman. Do you remember how much you drank the day she left for studying abroad? She's the most toxic woman's heart." Willow is a perfect example. Trust your little brother on this. Women just slow us down, don't they? Isn't it better to be a real man? A Sigma male. I gave him a hard smack on the back of the head and said, Fine. I was actually going to tell you, Yochu has a game room at home with all kinds of consoles." The next second, he was gone in a flash. It seems that, for him, the appeal of games far outweighs women. My brother is still a child, young and naive, not really understanding that there can be a certain pleasure in relationships. His concerns aren't without merit, but neither Anna nor I are the type of people to lose ourselves in a relationship. After all these years, it seems she and I are the most compatible. As for marriage, it's a much more complicated matter that requires careful thought. Chapter 18. The woman who had swapped the babies back then was named Sandra. I later investigated her and found that, in fact, she had no personal grudge against our family. But what happened back then was not a spur-of-the-moment decision, it was all part of her plan. She had been a nurse at the hospital and, being in a position to access information about expectant mothers, it was not difficult for her to learn of my mom's due date. She had purposely chosen the same day to give birth. Not long after the birth, she left her job, likely because she felt guilty. 4 years, she had been observing my brother from some corner, convinced that the child she had manipulated and raised as her own son was her true flesh and blood. Thinking back on these years, it's a chilling thought to know someone had been watching my brother like that. However, 20 years later, there is no direct evidence that Sandra was responsible for the baby swap. I had been too young at the time to fully understand the consequences, and later I had forgotten about the whole thing. If Makoto hadn't come to find me, this blurry memory would have remained buried in my mind. I saw Makoto again when I was passing by a club. I saw Sandra gripping Makoto's hand tightly, pleading in a low voice, "Makoto, please come back with me. Okay, you're still young. Go back, repeat the year, and take the university entrance exam again. You still have a bright future ahead of you. Gambling is not for you, my child." She had lost a lot of weight since the last time I saw her, not just normal weight loss, but it seemed like she was sick. "Get lost, you old hag. Don't tell me what to do," she continued to beg. "Makoto, I was wrong. Don't ruin your life. I'm sick, and I won't live much longer. Please, come back with me." I found this scene rather amusing. The woman, it seemed, knew what the right path was all along. From a distance, I overheard Makoto viciously tell his biological mother, "You should have just swapped me with someone else back then. Who would want a mother like you? You're sick, and you deserve it. This is your punishment." From an outsider's perspective, anyone who knew the full story couldn't blame Makoto, but I still wouldn't forgive them. One mother, who was willing to destroy another family for her own selfish desires, and a son who had grown up in that twisted family. Makoto was indeed a victim, but it wasn't necessary for things to turn out this way. If he had suppressed his desire for revenge, the results of the paternity test would only have been known to my family and him. He chose this path. Of course, the most wicked of all was Sandra, the one who had caused all of this. Later, I heard that Makoto had ended up in this situation because he had grown accustomed to the extravagant world and could no longer tolerate ordinary life. After a chance victory in a casino, he realized how quickly money could come, and he became addicted to gambling, unable to pull himself out. It's a rather pitiful story. As for Willow, she never contacted Makoto again. She was never the innocent, pure-hearted girl she appeared to be. Her approach to relationships was always very utilitarian. She was simply looking for someone to rely on. She knew that in the Liu family, boys were valued over girls, and her purpose there was to be married off into a good family. Only by finding a suitable husband could she maintain her dignity and position in her own family. But now, after offending the Wang family, she had completely become an abandoned child of the Liu family. Time passed slowly and calmly over the next 2 to 3 years. Lately, I had been dreaming frequently about the day my brother was born. Over and over again. In my dreams, I kept reliving that day. Sometimes, I would see myself, lying in bed, unaware that anyone had come in, and the person who was loved and cared for by the family was someone else. I would suddenly sit up, waking up in a cold sweat. Anna would look at me, blushing, and say, "George, are we working late tonight?" I was speechless. It had been 3 years, and she was getting better at keeping me on my toes, always finding new reasons to make me work overtime. Not a single day could be missed. Normally, I didn't even dare to get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. After a while, I collapsed exhausted onto the bed and said, "Well, Tomorrow I'm going to spend the night out with my brother. Don't wait for me to come back." She sighed softly. "We're already married, and yet in your heart, you still care more about your brother than me."